Hi, Nitisha. Thank you so much for being a part of Life After University and being willing to share your time for our viewers to share about your journey from being a student at Oxford to now being the senior product manager at Amazon. How do you feel about it? And tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hi, Shivika. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's a privilege. I love what you're doing, and really happy to share my experience with all of your viewers. So, a short background of how I really landed up here. I first started with doing my computer science engineering in Bangalore, in a college called Pessit, and then I went on to doing something completely different, which was business analysis and project management at Goldman Sachs. Though it was on the tech side, so there was something, yes, overlapping with my studies at college. And post that, I went on to doing something completely different again, which was being the city manager for a food tech startup for about 7 months.
Wow.
So it was a startup called Inner Chef, and I launched the operations of that in the city called Hyderabad in India. And post 7 months, I then went on to doing my MBA at Oxford, where I focused mostly on strategy and operations and marketing kind of subjects.
Right.
And post that, I then got an internship at Amazon, but this was on the operations side.
Okay.
So, you know, the fulfillment centers of Amazon that are huge and which really are the engine of Amazon, the behind the scenes that ship out all of the products. So I was there. I worked as an intern there, and I really liked what I was doing. So I took up the offer, but the offer was contingent on me learning German. Because I had interned in a German FC.
Yeah.
And I had to learn German before I could go because, you know, everybody then speaks German and your daily business is in German. So I literally studied for like 3 months, purely German. It was almost like studying for GMAT, you know, 8 hours a day. I was learning a language. And I think German is said to be one of the most difficult languages. It took some time, but I did learn it. And then I finally went on to working there in Germany.
Right.
For a year and a half. I then pivoted again away from operations, and this time more to the business side, where I became a senior product manager for expanding Amazon into Turkey. So I now work to expand the business of Amazon in Turkey, create and launch more products and features for our Turkish customers. So yes, that's how I landed here.
Wow. So it's kind of been like too many things, and you've experimented a lot, and you've worked in different environments from the very beginning.
Yes. And I think that has definitely given me a lot of clarity, you know, as to what I want to do next and what I want to do in the long term. So being able to see those different things and then knowing what I like, what I don't like has been helpful for sure.
I'm sure. I mean, you know, things happen in the past and we always feel like, why has this happened? Because we've just changed paths. And it's only in the end that we realize, oh no, that is how this one's helping me now, or how a certain experience or a certain exposure really helps you in the future, which you do not think in the beginning.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you mentioned that now you know what you want to do in the future. What are your plans for the future, just because how you've had your journey in the past. So what really are your plans for the future then?
Well, something that I've recently started is a small startup venture of my own called Vital Front. So during all of these different jobs that I've done, right, and even at Amazon right now, I've interviewed a lot of people. And one of the things that I still find so surprising is that people with 10, 15 years of work experience, their CVs still have typos. You have grammatical mistakes, you have mistakes where people, their email ID is not right, or, just basic mistakes that I'm surprised after 15 years, people generally don't have. Or sometimes the CV is fantastic. You know, you have top-notch things, very powerful bullets on the job and work experience that you had. But then when you come to the interview, they're completely phased out. And I'm like, somebody with 10 years of work ex, I would expect really strong stories, a lot of confidence, and all of that is missing. So I just feel like the CV and the interview prep is kind of a bundle that that yes, is something that you need to be good at to clear an interview, right? And that is what I thought I should be helping people in. I wish when I was young, I had somebody who guided me through these steps. I did a lot of a lot of this research and stuff through either my mentors, who I'm incredibly thankful to, or a lot of internet research. But I feel like on the internet there is just so much advice. There is so much advice, and it is so generic, right? Some apply to you, some don't apply to you, and you have a lot of automated algorithms that tell you, okay, you put in your CV, they tell you exactly what you need to change.
Right.
But trying to model everybody's CV according to a standard algorithm, I don't feel is fair, right? Every person is different, their stories are different, and the way you want to present them has to be different. True. So it requires a personal touch, it requires experience, and it requires understanding the other person, understanding their goals, so that you can then present them very well. So yes, that is what I am out to do.
Right.
Actually, I do want to add a second part also to the kind of goal that is there, and which is also very similar to what you're doing here, right? It is basically to destigmatize some of the common myths at an early stage. And I love these interviews that you're doing, and I'm trying to do something similar through the blogs that I have. So I take an experience from a lot of accomplished people in my network and ask them about their failure stories, right? I don't think we hear enough of those. To tell people that it is okay to fail, to tell people it's okay to not get the first job that you're going to apply to, that it's not going to be your dream job, that you find it probably later on, but kind of take away the best from whatever you're doing. So yes, that is kind of the second goal that I have.
I think that's an amazing initiative that you've started, and through your startup journey, what you're trying to do is solving a major problem for students. I mean, I was a student when I was a student last in 2016-17. I remember people telling me when I moved to the UK to study from Warwick that you should start with your CV right away, because getting jobs will be tough and you know how to do it. And then every country kind of has a different format to it, right? And then you have to follow that. And I kind of really suck at making CVs and writing about myself as to what I've done and my accomplishments. I don't know. I just don't feel too right about doing it. It's just very uneasy kind of thing to me. So I feel this is so amazing because I've seen so many people struggle with it. My own sister sends her CV to my cousin sister to make it because she doesn't know how to do it, or she doesn't feel whatever she's doing is right in terms of like the format and stuff. So it is amazing what you're doing. And I wish you all the best with it. I'm sure it's going to do great. It's going to solve so many problems with the students with regards to the stress they go through in terms of building that CV, building those skills, and all of that. And I'd love for you to share the link so that we can share the link through the video so that more people know about this and more people reach out to you to get that hyper-personalized CV that helps them get that perfect job or helps them get that perfect profile that they are looking to create.
Thank you so much, Shivka. Very kind words. And yes, I will definitely share the link with you.
Perfect. What I'd like to know is what kind of skills do you feel university provides in terms of you starting a venture now? So most people think that universities don't give that environment in terms of the entrepreneurial skills that one needs. But what, according to you, are the skills that university does provide if you want to start your venture or in terms of your professional life?
So I'm going to talk about like graduation, right? So not post-graduation, but like kind of the skills that are provided at a younger stage by the university for general professional life. Now, it really depends on what you are going to do ahead. If you are going to stick to the core field that you've chosen, then definitely those are the skills and knowledge that you can already use. But in terms of general qualities, there are three that I would like to mention. So the first one is logical thinking, right? You invariably come across so many problems that whose solutions can actually be applied across industries. True. So, for example, I was doing computer science for 4 years, and I went on to doing something completely different after that, which was like business analysis and project management. But the logical thinking that I got, for example, how do I solve a particular problem? And I could think of the algorithm, but I just can't write it in code. Right? So those are the kind of things that you can actually take away, and by being just a little creative, and kind of remembering those logical issues that you've come across, you're able to apply it to multiple areas. So, and even if you don't like what you're doing, I have to say that this is something that you will take away. So be happy that not all is lost, or not all time is lost.
Yeah.
Right. The second thing I want to talk about is conflict management. So this is probably not something that people are specifically looking for, but you're organizing events in college, you are talking to your professors, you're negotiating with your colleagues. This is, I think, for the first time in a very large group, people are exposed to conflicts, right? Because until then, it was a very safe environment. You have your teachers and you have your parents to kind of take care of you. But here out in the college with so many people there, and you trying to make a mark, you're trying to learn and do something, make your career. I think conflict management is something that you just invariably learn. You learn to lead without a title, right? So you don't have a title for something, but just influencing people around you to achieve that goal, to create that party, that to organize this event and make it a success just amongst many colleges, is something that, yes, university equips you for. And I think the third thing that I want to talk about is effective ways of learning.
Right.
So this is something that is very, I think it's underestimated and underrated, because this is very important, right? I know a lot of students end up cramming all of their information in the last few days to give their exams. But this, I used to do the same, by the way, completely guilty of it. And I suggestions from my friends, which I then started applying. Yeah. And I'll just talk about it in a minute. But the other thing is, I was watching this course on EDX. It's called Thinking 101, and it is about behavioral psychology. They just kind of tell you why people do what they do and what are some effective ways of thinking, as trivial as that sounds. But yes, so in that, they were talking about effective ways of remembering. And so just for an example, right, one of the ways is called retrieval, which means that if you're studying something, you don't read it again and again and again, because that's not going to help you remember. You rather read it once or twice, and then when you're doing something completely different, try and remember or like retrieve what you read. So that enforces the content in your memory. And this was something that I was advised by my friend at that point of time. And when I started doing that, I just found it to be a lot more effective in terms of me giving my exams. And this is very helpful even later, when you have to give presentations or in professional life, whenever you have to remember things. I think these are things that are underrated, but your university really helps you with kind of preparing you for your professional life for this.
That was very, very informative. I'd like to just concise the point. That's logical thinking, and then second is conflict resolution, and the third one being effective ways of learning. And I completely agree with three of them. I wouldn't say I learned all of them in the same university, but being part of Delhi University and then moving abroad to study for my master's, I kind of learned three of the skills at different points in time, and they've really, really helped me, especially effective ways of learning, because I'm kind of the last minute person. So I would leave my studies to the last minute, and last minute meaning the last 5 hours, kind of literally. So it was only during Warwick I realized things are not going to work like that whilst I'm there. So I had to really look out for ways to do things. And thank you for those three skills that one must look out for in case one is missing out on those. So those will be very, very helpful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that we talk about entrepreneurship and starting your own venture, what I'd like to know from you is, now that you have launched the startup, you have come far from where you started off, and you know kind of how the journey is and what are the highs and lows of that journey. What would be your advice to any college student or university student who's thinking of starting out or has already started up and is looking for some kind of guidance? So what would be your tip, your advice, or what kind of suggestions would you give to someone in uni at the moment?
Right. So I think the first thing that I would say is, whatever you're doing, do it for the right reasons. Right. One of my mentors when I was at Goldman Sachs told me that, Nitisha, leave your job if you're running towards something, not if you're running away from something.
Right.
I think entrepreneurship today is very glamorized. Everyone's like, I want to do this on my own, working for 40 hours or standard is just so boring. Not necessarily. So that is what I would want to say to anybody who's starting out today with their own venture, that be aware of your reasons. So if you want to get into entrepreneurship because you want to kind of prove something to somebody, or if you want to impress somebody, or if you want to get into a big company for that matter, but for the wrong reasons, you're not going to be satisfied and you're not really going to be happy, right? And I mean, we all spend 1/3 of our lives working. So you want to make at least part of it worthwhile, if not all. So that's the first thing, that understand what you want to do, and yes, do it for the right reasons. The second thing that I'd like to say is be very clear on the problem you're solving, like the why of what you're doing.
Right.
Because many times later in your entrepreneurial journey, you're going to be faced with a lot of doubt by people close to you, by people in the society, by your customers, by everybody at some point of time. And at that point of time, the only thing that you can hold on to is your why. Is really why you started this, is why you want to do this. And if that reason is strong enough, you'll be able to kind of cross these hurdles that come across your way.
Yeah.
Right. And the third thing that I would like to say, this is something that I read from a personal finance book by Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which said, action beats inaction hands down. Today, there are so many resources out there. So try things out, prototype them, go talk to people outside, run your idea by them. You can create so many surveys, learn what customers actually want, whether you think your idea will really fly. So it is something so easy to do. I think like maybe a couple of years back, 2030, it was not that easy to reach such a large audience and be able to test your idea. But today, you can absolutely do that. So it already gives you some confidence as to, hey, yes, this is something I want to scale. I want to pivot my strategy. I want to add additional features. Or you can also know whether this is something you want to do part-time or you want to do full-time. I know a couple of my friends who had started small ventures of theirs when we were in college itself. And they went on to doing a job and then running their venture on the side. Some realized that, okay, this startup is not something, I don't have any other idea. I don't know if it's going to scale. They left it. And I mean, they stopped it, they continued working. And the others actually realized through their work and talking to more people that, hey, my idea has potential. And they left work and then started focusing completely on the startup. So I would say that definitely do your research. Like, don't go into it blind. Do your customer research, do your market research, talk to people, and yes, then take a conscious choice of pursuing it.
Right. I feel I would love to emphasize, I mean, all these points are really important and I completely agree with each one of them. But one thing that's really, really important is to know your why. Because as students, like you said, it's been glamorized so much that one can feel like, let's go for it. But if you don't know your why, any low or any fallback would really be the last step. I mean, the last one for you. And you would never feel like getting back. And from a personal point of view as well, every time there was a fallback, there was also a feeling as to, let's just stop it. Let's not go for it. But instantly I knew, because I always knew my why, instantly I knew, no, I want to do it. So despite all the crying and all the feeling low about whatever has happened in the past, I would always feel like getting back and doing it again. Or if you feel it's not working out, pivoting. So very important. Know your why before you start, and then research is the way forward, and everything else will eventually fall in place, I feel.
Completely agree. I mean, I don't know, for everyone who's also watching out there, right? There is this talk by Simon Sinek, who really focuses on the why. I think he's also written a book about it. Would definitely encourage people to watch that. Very insightful.
It's a lovely book. I've read that book a couple of years ago and it's really interesting. I completely agree. One should read that book before starting out so that you know your why. At least you start looking out for it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So you initially talked about you want to go through interviews where people talk about their failures, because that is not something discussed too much. Everybody wants to talk about how you got there and how you made it and all of that. But the background is never out there. Nobody knows what's happening behind the scenes off camera. So what I would like to know from you is, were there any parts during university where you felt that something is not working out, or you didn't know the way forward? And how did you work it out then? I mean, how did you figure out whenever there was something like that, when you felt, okay, I don't know what to do next? So how did you take that situation and overcome it?
Right. So it's very interesting that you ask, right? And this is something that I tell everybody, that I'm still lost on days.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like I figured it all out. And I tell people that if anybody tells you they figured it all out, they're lying. They're outright lying. So I think being lost is not a virtue of student life or college life, but it is a part and parcel of daily life. Right? You always have an idea of yes, a couple of days, couple of months, couple of years, but there are so many external factors influencing all of that. And I mean, you grow, right? You change, your ideas and perspectives evolve, and things that you wanted to do or believed in 5 years back, they're probably different today. It's absolutely okay to change, and I think it's absolutely okay to be lost and then figure your way out. So thinking about a specific experience, I think when I joined computer science engineering, I didn't want to do it at all, right? So the only reason I joined it was because my parents thought it would be a great idea. So I actually wanted to take up commerce and go along the economics route and the finance route and everything. But then they saw aptitude in me to do science. So they said, no, let's do this. I'm like, okay, I didn't have better options at that point of time. And so I agreed. I took almost every day as a torture. Like the first 1 week, first 2 weeks, I'm like, why am I learning this? I have no idea how I'm going to apply it. So at that point of time, I did a lot of reading. My mom's a counselor, and so I spoke to her. And 3 very specific things that I can at least talk about that helped me. The first thing, as trivial again as it sounds, I started maintaining a gratitude journal. So every evening, I used to write about 3 things that I was happy about on that day, and 3 things that I'm looking forward to. So the second thing was that I decided to focus on the learning, right? As I said, no learning goes waste. So whatever I was learning, I was kind of cognizant that if I learn this, I can probably apply it to something else at a later point of time. Right? If I know how to solve a problem in computer science, I can use that logic to solve the problem in electronics, but maybe I can't write the code that way. Right. And the third is, this is something that my mom also told me, is we're very harsh on ourselves. Okay. But we're very kind on anybody else and everybody else outside us. So ask yourself this: if you had a friend in the same position who was feeling so lost and didn't know what to do, what would you advise them? And when you come up with that answer, apply it to yourself, because we're just very, very kind on the others. So the most important thing is that acknowledge what you feel, right? Don't put it under the carpet, but acknowledge that you're feeling lost. You don't know what to do at this point of time, but also know that it will be okay. And how it will be okay is definitely not by brooding over it and kind of staying there, but talk to people. The one question I used to ask everybody I met, I would think when I was in college, is how did you know what you want to do? I heard multiple answers, from strokes of enlightenment to reading to a personal problem that, then kind of motivated them to take a certain path. But talk to people. And yes, I think do something about it and it will work out is what I can say at the end.
Absolutely. Those were some beautiful points you mentioned. I think these are some things that students, and not just students, everyone at this point in time needs to hear, because it's been a tough time for each one present in this world. And it's so important to understand the fact that don't be too harsh on yourself. Time is tough for everyone. And most importantly, it'll all fall in place with time. And eventually you will figure it out. Don't worry about it. And student life can be very stressful, and I'm sure it has been very stressful for a lot of students who've been planning to travel abroad and study and whatnot. But it will fall in place. Don't worry, and stay positive about how the times are. I mean, keep going. It will all work out for each one.
Yes, I mean, I think especially because the pressure to have it all figured out is just so much.
So much.
Like, it is at 12th, in the 12th grade. It is also then when you're doing your undergraduate. Oh, by 3rd year, by 4th year, you should have it all figured out. You should know what you want to do. Then again, when you're doing maybe your MBA or your, postgraduate, and then you're doing your, in your postgraduate, they're like, now you should have it all figured out. Like, the next job that you want to take. but
Yeah.
that's not really necessary, And a gap year is completely okay. You take some 6 months off. There are things that happen, like if there are things that are not in your control, people understand that. So no one's going to look at your CV and be like, oh my God, you didn't do anything for 6 months.
Yeah.
I can't take you. No one's going to say that.
That is true. I completely agree with all of those points completely. Okay, now we're coming to the last segment of our conversation, and you've shared some very, very interesting, very, very informative experiences of yours that I am sure will be so helpful for students. And even I'm learning so much from all of that. I mean, kind of things that I've not realized have been happening, but just because you mentioned it, I kind of feel that, okay, yes, this happened. This is what I learned during uni. I'm not realizing it, but I did. But thank you for that. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible if you weren't willing to share, but thank you for that. And moving to the final part, which is a very, very simple question, wherein I just want to know why, right? So what would you choose? I mean, you have been into employment and now you're also starting your own venture. So what would you choose, entrepreneurship or employment, and why?
Shivika, I'm going to give you an answer that I'm sorry you might not like, right? So I can't choose.
Right.
So that's the thing, right? I have worked in both, in entrepreneurship. I've also worked in a startup before, doing something of my own now, and I've worked in big companies too. But I have to say, both of them have their own advantages, right? For example, when you're working in a big company, you have the scale, you have the efficiencies, you have so many resources readily available to kind of read and to learn from, and you have so many talented people from all fields of life, all fields to kind of learn from. And then when you're working in a startup, it's like you have more responsibility, right? At younger stages, you have more responsibility, you have steep learning curves, you kind of become a jack of all trades because you're donning multiple roles at the same time. Or yeah, your idea, sorry, you have a quicker time to market for your ideas, is what I think.
Yeah.
So choosing between these two is going to be very tough. Like, I absolutely enjoy my work at Amazon, and I learn so much there. And then in my spare time, I try and build on Vital Front. But there's this book that I read by Susan Cain. It's called Quiet, and it's a power of introverts in an extroverted world.
Yeah.
And she says that when you're looking forward to kind of doing something, right, ask yourself these three questions. So, and this could be for a long term, this could be choosing between entrepreneurship and employment, but ask yourself these three questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what did you really like to do when you were a child? So while the answer might be simplistic, I think what we need to dig deeper is the underlying impulse. Like, so for example, I liked dancing. But why did you like dancing? Was it just putting on great clothes? Was it putting on a show for people? Was it the applause that you really wanted to hear? So kind of understanding the why of what you liked when you were young gives you an insight into what you might want to do also in the future, or what parts should your job or the entrepreneurship thing, entail.
Right.
The second one is, in your current job, in your current state, what are the things that you naturally gravitate to? So what do you volunteer for extra? So if you have spare time, what do you take up to do? So at least in my job, I realized that in my previous jobs, it's not like I took up these projects, technical projects on my own, but I always took up extra interviews. If I had extra time, I would love doing the interviews. I would love organizing events. So these are things that I really liked doing. And the third thing is, who or what do you envy? So I think envy is a very ugly emotion per se, but it is very insightful also, because I think mostly you envy what you wish you had, or you envy people who you wish, things that you had, or things that you were. So that really gives you an insight. Okay, I wish I had the life of this person or the job of this person, and then ask yourself again, why? Why do you wish that? So you identify traits or things that you want in your current job, or that you would want in your future job. So I think just answering these three questions and getting the insights to them might help you choose between entrepreneurship and employment, or might help you choose what you want to do next, So yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you a choice, but yeah, kind of trying to figure that out for everybody through these questions might be helpful.
No, I completely agree. And most importantly, I feel the similar way because I think it's important to know your why, and that's where it comes from. If you feel that you work best in a corporate setting or you work best in a team setting, then you might as well go for something like working somewhere or say working in a startup and not owning one. But if you feel that you want to lead things and you're really good at your leadership skills or you want to build at that, then might as well start your own venture or take up a leadership position just to try out what really works for you. So I agree there that there is no joy in choosing either because they both have their own highs and lows. They both have their positives and negatives. So one has to really know from within what one wants, and whatever you want, then just work for it. And whatever works for you best is what is good for you and what makes you and keeps you happy.
Right. And that's why I would also encourage people to experiment, right? There's no harm in experimenting. So I have to say that this is actually my second venture that I'm trying. The first one failed. And I know why it failed, and I'm kind of taking away learnings from that. But yeah, work for some time, learn the things from big companies, then start something of your own. If that doesn't work, go back to them. I mean, go back to working in a bigger company, but just, yeah, kind of try it and then decide for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't try, you'll never know. So one has to really experiment. And if you really want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to try and also be willing to fail because it might just not work out. So you have to be testing it out every now and then, not just what you want to do, but even your skills. If you feel that if that's something you really want to do. Just for an example, I think back in you mentioned dancing, and it just took me back to my dancing days. And back in uni and school, I used to dance a lot. So I almost danced for about say almost 8 to 10 years through school and through uni and everything. And for a moment, I thought maybe this is what I want from life. But in undergrad, I wanted to experiment that if that is going to work for me or not. So I joined my society and I performed in almost 50 different colleges, only to realize by the end of it that this is not what I want to pursue as my career. I don't want to be a dancer. I enjoy it as a hobby, but it's not something I really want to do. And something similar happened with basketball. I mean, my coach really wanted me to do great in that, but I kind of realized in high school that's not something I want to take up eventually.
Right.
It's very important to experiment, to be there, to read about it, even if you don't go out there and do it per se, but read about it, research it, like you mentioned in the beginning. And if you feel this is something that you would want to jump into, then go right away. But if you feel this is not something you want to do, then look out for different options. And I think that would really help someone take up whatever they want in their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe to give you just one more example, right? There, I know I mentioned that I was interested in the economics, the finance route initially. And when I was working and I got an admission into the MBA, I was also thinking of, okay, what are the kind of subjects that I want to specialize in, right? And the finance part then came back to me. I'm like, hey, now this is my chance, and maybe I can learn a lot more about it and kind of pivot my career. But I still want to know whether I really liked to do it, whether I would really want to do it. So I took up this course called CFA, the Chartered Financial Analyst. I said, okay, we can do the level 1 and see if I really like it or not. So I think for a period of 6 months, I studied it every weekend and then gave the exam. Though I did clear the exam, the thing I realized in the end was I don't want to do this 24/7. Like, I for sure don't want to do it. And I dropped the idea. But I think it was, if I hadn't explored it before or hadn't tried it out, I would have probably taken finance in my MBA and then realized much later that, oh, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, definitely just emphasizing the experimenting part.
Absolutely. I am so thankful to you for giving in your time, for giving in all your experiences, learnings, and so much that you've shared with myself and now everyone who's going to be watching it. And I hope it guides anyone who's watching that it's okay to fail, it's okay to change industries. I mean, all these stereotypes have made everyone so conscious of their decisions that it has to be in a certain way, in a certain time, with certain people, which is not true. I mean, people are doing so many different things, and just to learn from you, you have experimented in your life and you have done so many different things through which you've learned. And now you've come out as this strong, independent, confident woman who wants to do more big things and more things that she loves doing. And it's great. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of this with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me too, Shivika. More power to you and good luck with your venture too.
Thank you so much. Thank you.